She's Reform's most senior councillor in the UK. The leader of Kent County Council, Linden Kemkaran, joins us to discuss her DOGE project.
She'll be telling us how she intends to save 75 million in the next financial year and why she regards herself as the test case for Nigel Farage's possible premiership.
Kent County Council is paying for classes for adult education centres up and down the county that are teaching English as a second language. Now, I'm saying to my cabinet member, can we look into this? How much is this costing us?
So we're sort of thinking, because Kent is a big council and it has the biggest budget in the UK compared to the other councils that Reform do run, that you are technically the most senior Reform councillor in the land. That's how we're working it out anyway, Linden. But the point is, I suppose the big question about Nigel Farage's party, yourself included, is amid all of this rhetoric around him being the next Prime Minister and maybe running the next government, can Reform run things? You've gone into Kent. What, first of all, have you discovered about how councils are run in this country, and what do you want to change?
Well, it has been a huge learning curve. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I have never run a council before. So when I got elected as a councillor, first of all, and then a week later got elected as leader of my group of 57 Reform councillors, I knew that the challenge was going to be enormous. I knew that Kent County Council has a significant amount of debt. Although I have found out that it's not as bad as other councils. So there's always, every cloud has a silver lining. In terms of how the council has been run, it's been run by the Conservatives for nearly 30 years. So as you can imagine, coming in as a brand new administration was incredibly difficult. The whole system here in Kent, and I imagine other councils, is set up for continuity. It is set up for maybe a change of leader, once every 4 years, not a sweeping out of the old administration and a bringing in of not only a new administration, a brand new political party. That's the scale of change we're talking about. So when I arrived, I knew that the first few weeks would be pretty difficult, and they have been, but they've also been filled with opportunities to make really significant differences to the way this place is run, and hopefully do things better and do things differently. And I think that's what the voters wanted us to come in and do.
Just to explain to us what it's like going into that job and what happens when you open the books, look under the bonnet. What's that process exactly? How do you then get a grip of what's going on and work out what needs doing?
So I'll talk you through how it happened. So we had a group leadership contest, which lasted a week. And I can honestly say it was probably the most intense week of my entire life. Lots of people wanted to be leader, all very, very good people. But overwhelmingly, the group voted for me, which I was hugely honoured to accept. So as soon as I'd been elected, which happened at about 7 p.m. on a Thursday night, I was whisked upstairs to my new office, which I'm sitting in now. And I had the chief exec and the general counsel sit me down and congratulate me on winning. And they started to go through the things that I needed to be aware of. Now, I imagine this is what the Prime Minister goes through when he or she goes into number 10 for the first time, but instead of being handed the nuclear codes, I was handed the budget book and the Kent's strategic framework, all big meaty documents that I was told to familiarise myself with, because within the coming days and weeks, I would now be responsible for rewriting, planning the budget for next year. I was also talked through the freight train that is local government reorganisation that is hurtling down the tracks, and told my responsibilities as leader would be to lead Kent through this period of massive uncertainty and massive change. So, of course, my second day was really doing the media round. Of course, that has to come first and foremost. Everybody wanted to know about me and what I was doing. So that was my second day. And then we're into my first proper week, which was complicated in a different way, because then we started to get to grips with the money side of things. So I'm lucky enough at KCC here to have a team of very experienced, very dedicated council officers. So really my first couple of weeks were just having one-to-one briefings and understanding the scale of the different departments that I am now in charge of, and starting to formulate my own plan for the strategic direction that I want to take Kent County Council in.
So let's drill into the figures. You've got a gross budget of more than 2.5 billion, which is, a hefty sum. How much is the council in debt, out of interest?
So it is a hefty sum, but I just think money is money. at the end of the day. You've got money coming in, you've got money going out, and in between, you've got to pay for all the stuff you've got to pay for. So there are certain things we have to pay for by law, and there are certain things that are discretionary. So that's how it works out in the local authorities. We're in debt to the tune of about 780 million, which sounds like a phenomenal amount of money. It is a phenomenal amount of money. But as I've learned, compared to other councils, that is not a terrible, terrible amount, which I know sounds absolutely crazy, but there's lots of things that underpin that explanation. As you know, our thing in Reform is all about saving the taxpayer money, working out if something is value for money. If it's not, we will either scrap it or we will work out a way to do it very differently. That's what we were voted in to do. And I've been very clear that's exactly what my priority has been.
Okay, so you've launched this Doge project with Zia Youssef, the chairman, sort of driving this Elon Musk inspired Trumpian policy forward in the local councils that you're now in control of. What's your priority then? Is it getting that debt down? I mean, it's nearly $1 billion. It's a considerable amount of money. And indeed, in the vein of Youssef and indeed Richard Tice, he's talked about trying to cut government waste by a half if he was in office. How are you going to even begin to do that?
Well, there are several ways to attack this huge problem. I've created a cabinet position for a Department of Local Government Efficiency, which has the slightly unwieldy acronym of DOLGE. And I have a deputy DOLGE as well, which sounds even weirder. But between the two of them, they're both highly impressive individuals who have a background in accountancy, business management, you name it, they have done it in their very long and varied careers. So I tasked them straight away with examining in detail the budget, examining in detail every single portfolio that my cabinet members now hold, and looking at things like procurement. Obviously, highways is one of our biggest and most complex departments here at KCC, and anyone who's driven on our roads here in Kent will probably have narrowly missed having a blowout when their tyres have hit a pothole, because we are riddled with potholes in this county. It's an expensive problem to fix, but I got my dolges to start looking at the procurement process. How are we procuring people to come in and fix these potholes? How is it being done? Is it being done on a case-by-case basis? Are we awarding contracts over a long period of time? Because that historically has been done by other councils. Are we getting the best value for money? Are we making sure that the contractors that we bring in, for example, with highways and potholes, are we making sure that they give us some sort of quality assurance on the work? Because I think at the moment, what we're finding is we're bringing contractors in to fix the potholes in a section of road, which they go ahead and do, but then there's no guarantee on their work. So if it goes wrong in 6 months' time and the pothole reappears, guess what? We buy them in again to fix it again. Is that value for money? It doesn't sound like it to me.
There's a perception, isn't there, from the public that any public spending, whether it's national government or local government, contractors will just pluck a figure out of the air because they think that councils will just pay them whatever they ask because it's other people's money. Councils are very, profligate. They don't really care about saving money. Have you found evidence of that, or is that a myth?
We are in the process of finding out whether that is a fact that's been happening here at KCC or whether it's a myth. Now, you mentioned Zia Youssef and the headquarters Doge team. We were really fortunate on Monday morning of this week. We kicked the week off with a bang. Zia came down. Aaron Banks was here as well, as you may have seen. And we had our Doge tech entrepreneur, a guy called Nathaniel Freed. They all came down to my domain here at KCC, and we had an incredibly productive meeting. First thing Monday morning, I had my Dolge in there as well, and I presented them with a report of what we found already. We found an awful lot just through our initial, we've only been here 3 weeks really, but we've already found areas where we think there are significant savings to be made. So I'm incredibly grateful for head office for prioritising Kent, because I think that is what the voters want us to do. That the feedback on social media after Monday morning was phenomenal. People saying, thank goodness, at last, politicians are grabbing the bull by the horns and asking the difficult questions and trying to find out if money is being wasted, if there is this assumption that when you bid for a contract with Kent County Council, you've made for life, that is exactly the kind of thing we're going to be looking at. And going back again to the potholes subject, because it probably is one of the ones, I hope, where we're going to be able to not only start saving money, but actually visibly and materially improve the quality of our roads, because roads are something that are used by every single person pretty much every single day. And I don't think that applies to any one of the other services that we offer.
Mm.
So going back to that analogy, are we doing the right thing by awarding contracts to the big contractors every single time? Or should we be looking to award contracts to fix the roads to more local operators, local contractors? In a way, that's a smart move, because if you live in a certain part of Kent and you've got the contract to fix the roads in that part of Kent, my goodness, you're going to want to do a good job, aren't you? Because your neighbours are going to know that you're responsible for having fixed that piece of road.
But Linden, what's the end game here? Is it to bring that near £1 billion debt down? Is it to reapportion your 2.5 billion budget so that you're spending more on the things that the residents want as opposed to wasting money on the things that they don't? Or is the overall aim, and I think it's pretty critical from a political perspective for you to do this, to make sure that council tax bill for the resident either remains the same or goes down under Reform's watch?
So it's like a three-legged stool. I mean, each of those areas is equally important. How we approach it, that is something I am in the process of working out, because as your question, Camilla, just demonstrates what a massive, complicated beast this is. And it's a local authority. It's not like a business. You cannot come in and break it apart and rebuild it, because we are providing services to the most vulnerable people in Kent out there. These are statutory services that we are legally obliged to provide, like adult social care, education, all sorts of things, protecting vulnerable children. You cannot break it and sack everybody and start again. That's just simply not an option. So I'm approaching it with my business brain on. However, I'm also approaching it with a view that we need to be looking at the biggest, as I see it, the biggest, bulkiest spends that we have. One of those, interestingly, is home to school transport. I'm going to ask you, have a guess at how much Kent County Council spends on getting children to and from school every year. Can you guess?
Are you talking about actual school buses along with like taxis for people
Yeah.
who, what, in
Especially-
millions?
Yeah. See if you can guess. I'm just throwing
I
it
don't
out
know,
there.
15 million quid?
I'll tell you, £98 million a year.
Wow.
Okay, your face would say it all.
So
That was my face when I had
so
a briefing the other day.
So that's a 25th of the entire council budget.
Yeah. So you won't be
That's
surprised to know
massive.
I've tasked someone to look at that with some urgency to see if we can change that, because to me that is a phenomenal amount of money.
Mm.
It's not simple, because we are providing subsidised bus passes to get children to and from school. And if we were to suddenly pull that funding, that would then have a knock-on effect on how the bus companies run. And they would then have to pull other services, which would affect other residents. So you can see every decision I make has a series of knock-on effects. That's why we have to approach this. I'm not saying slowly, but we have to approach this sensibly and not rush into just saying, cut this, slash that, do that. Everything is interlinked, everything is intertwined. Having said that, there are definitely big savings to be made. And with the help of HQ, we intend to find them as quickly as we can.
Yeah. You teasingly said earlier that you'd found several areas where there was money to be saved. I think people listening to this and watching this really want to know more detail about what those things are. Give us a few more examples of where you think there is money to be saved.
Well, I've just talked about the home to school transport. That is
Yeah.
one, definitely. Potholes, contractors, fixing the roads. That is definitely another one. A smaller one, and I don't know how much, this is literally, I've just come out of my first informal cabinet meeting 5 minutes ago, talking to my head of my cabinet member for education and skills. She has found out that Kent County Council is paying for classes for adult education centres up and down the county that are teaching English as a second language. Now, I'm saying to my cabinet member, can we look into this? How much is this costing us? Why are we paying to teach people English as a second language? Shouldn't the onus be on the individual? If you come to this country, you can use Duolingo on your phone for nothing. You can use apps. If we do have to provide these classes, can we do them remotely? Do we have to be paying for the upkeep of a whole building for adult education for teaching people English as a second language?
Hang on, though, that's a bit contradictory. Reform MPs are constantly banging on about people who come here from overseas needing to learn English. I get your point on Duolingo, but it's a rather idiosyncratic language, Linden. I mean, you can't be a reformer cancelling English classes for people who don't speak the lingo.
We can absolutely be reformers, cancelling English classes for people who don't speak the lingo if it's costing KCC a lot of money. Like I say, this is something that has just come up. You're the first ones to hear about this. This is kind of an exclusive. I have asked my cabinet member to find me the figures and show me how much it's costing us. And if I don't think that's value for money for the taxpayer, it's going.
I
Simple
know,
as
but
that.
then if people don't have, in a way, council supported stroke subsidised language lessons to speak English, they just won't learn English. And then you'll be back to square one, and you want people to learn English.
Of course, we want people to learn English, but there are other ways of learning English that don't impact on my budget here at Kent County Council. These are the hard decisions I'm having to make.
Lyndon, how much do you feel the burden of effectively the Reform Party's future? And I say that because up until now, Reform hasn't had a record to defend. Obviously, that's advantageous to them in many respects because people want change and they can't point to anything that Reform's done wrong in the past. So you're starting with a clean slate. Obviously, the big difference now is that because Reform has won so many councils, people will look at how Reform has done in running those councils, and Reform is now going to have to do a good job of running things in order to retain the support they've got at the moment. You're right in the vanguard of that. You're in charge of the biggest council that Reform holds. So in a way, the chances of Nigel Farage doing well at the next general election rest in part on your shoulders. So how much is that something that plays on your mind?
No pressure then, is there really in
No.
this job? No pressure at all. No, you're absolutely right. It is a huge responsibility and the stakes could not be higher, really. When I was elected as leader of my group of fellow Reform councillors, part of my speech on that night was to put my vision to them of us here in Kent effectively being the shop window now for Reform through which the electorate are looking to judge whether they think they can put their trust in a Reform government at the next general election to take the reins of power for the entire country. So I am well aware that how I perform my job here at Kent County Council is a direct reflection on how people will view Nigel Farage being our next Prime Minister. So that is absolutely my guiding principle. It is a burden, but it's one that I've accepted willingly because I came into this. I joined Reform from the Conservatives because I feel that time is running out to save our country. I feel it, my fellow Reform councillors feel it. We all got involved because we felt absolutely compelled to put our own heads above the parapet. And it really is putting your head above the parapet to take on a job like this. Put ourselves out there, get voted in to try and effect change locally that will eventually translate into change nationally, because we all feel that this once great country of ours is sliding extremely rapidly into decline, not just economic decline, but social and cultural decline. Now, you may have heard I got a lot of flack for taking down the flag of Ukraine, which was not flying because it was indoors, but it was on the flagpole in my council chamber here at KCC. Now, my reason for doing that is not because I've got anything against the people of Ukraine, quite the opposite. But I walked into that chamber and I saw, the Union flag and the flag of Ukraine, and the flag of Kent was outside the chamber door. And immediately I thought, well, the focus here needs a little bit of sharpening up. I want everybody, when they walk into that council chamber, to do the very important business that we are tasked with here at KCC. I want them to be focusing absolutely first and foremost on Kent and the people of Kent, not the people of Kyiv. While you can have every sympathy with what's happening in Ukraine, what happens in my council chamber here at KCC has to put the people of Kent first and foremost, because you have to sort out the problems in your own backyard before you try to help everybody else.
Mm.
Linden, are you convinced that the Elon Musk model of government efficiency is definitely the one to follow? I ask that because the Tesla and ex-owner did leave the White House, seemingly in a degree of frustration and also apparently with a black eye.
Well, there have been no black eyes on my watch here at KCC, and I don't intend there to be. You have my assurance on that. Look, we're not America. We are very separate. I know, obviously, we have a lot of links with America, and I know the name Doge has come directly from the Trump administration. And I explained this to my cabinet when I proposed that we have our own DOGE. I said, I'm using this as just a handy acronym because now, because of Trump and the way he's dominated the headlines and Elon Musk, everybody knows what Doge means and what it stands for. It's kind of a handy shortcut to explain what we're trying to do here, which is really run a fine tooth comb through every single area of policy here at KCC and simply find out whether there is duplication, whether there is unnecessary bureaucracy, whether there are too many people all doing the same job. This is just bringing a really sensible business approach to KCC, which after all is what people want.
Mm. Have you been given any targets, Lyndon? I mean, how are you going to measure success? Has Nigel or Zia or anybody said to you, you need to, I don't know, cut 500,000 off the budget, 500 million maybe off the budget by this date, otherwise you're out? I mean, what's the measure of success?
Well, it doesn't quite work like that in local authorities. So my personal target, I know that I have to find around about 75 million pounds in saving this financial year. So that's my target. As far as what Nigel has asked for, our Monday morning Doge meeting with Zia was incredibly useful because we did talk about timelines. We're all keen to get the good news out as soon as we can, but I think we're all aware that we are going to work. We're all working our absolute socks off, and so is Zia and his team, and we're working incredibly closely together on this. But I think if I gave you a timeline here and now, I think I'd just be putting myself as a hostage to fortune. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say watch out, because big news is going to come out about incredible savings that I'm really confident we're going to find.
All right, Linden Kemkaran, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Kent County Council, where you're the leader on behalf of Reform. Lovely to speak to you on the Daily Tea.